I call the meeting to order. This is the April 8th, 2021 meeting of the Town Council's Financial Oversight Committee. And with us right now are Tom O'Connor, Kathy Hill, Rich Fricero, Mary McNally, Michael Kane, Steve Lonergan, and monitoring it for us is Don Mackey. Just wanted to say that I guess I may have to ask if anybody is recording the meeting other than LCAT. All right, hearing no one, I'll move on. And then I understand I'm supposed to state that this meeting is being held via Zoom in accordance with the governor's orders of March 16th, 2020. And Chris, I saw you join, so nice to have you. And our next order of business is the review and approval of the minutes of 4/1/21 that you were kind enough to take. And I'd entertain any corrections, additions, and if not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of 4/1/21.
So moved.
Okay, Rich?
I'll second.
Is that Kathy?
Yes.
Okay. Other discussion? Hearing none, I guess I understand we do these via roll call. Then I'll start with Tom.
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So unanimous. Thank you. So my thoughts of what I'd like to see we accomplish today, if possible. Like to just very briefly recap what we've received, additional information since our last meeting, and if there's anything obvious that we feel we still need. And then finish the review of the department summaries so we can determine what other items we think we need to follow up on or look into. And then match up, look at our schedule and determine when we have to do what, when. And also match up who we decided we wanted to talk to and match them up to the meetings so we can make sure that we talk to everybody we feel that we need to within the time frame that we have to. So that's pretty much the biggest part that I'm hoping we can accomplish. And then assuming we have time, we go through some of those items that we had identified that we would review where we didn't think we had to interview anybody about those particular budgets. So with that being said, so far we received some additional information from the schools. We got information from Mary regarding the accounting position, the police position, and the fire position. We got some schedules and projections on the DPW enterprise funds. And I'm not sure if I've missed anything major at this point. Are there other items that we feel we need to receive?
Tim?
Yes, Chris.
Was there additional information other on the DPW enterprise funds other than what was in the packet?
No.
Okay.
Yes, no. I will say that Tom did inquire about a couple of fees. One is the stormwater and also Board of Health fees and other fees that may not normally, show in our deliberations. And I had probably forwarded those inquiries, Tom, to Mary. She had received an answer back from Bruce that the stormwater, there is no projected increase in the stormwater fees for FY22 over FY21. So it wasn't, that was the one that wasn't clear to me from the packet, whether there was or was not.
Right. Thank you.
So, yep, go ahead, Chris. No, go right ahead.
I noticed something in the packet. I'm not sure which of the DPW enterprise funds it was, but it stipulated raising like 2 million. At the beginning, it said $2 million, but then in the actual motion that's part of it, it said raising $3 million. I think it's probably just a typo. Let me see if I can refresh my.
Okay, because that glossed over me.
Being an avid reader.
I'm a fiction reader. Stories. I like to be told stories.
So do I. But historical ones. Gee, I'm sorry. I didn't pull it out. Oh, wait a minute.
Chris,
Are you talking about this
Don't let me hold you up.
stormwater, the package that we received?
Yeah,
All right. Well, if you find it, I mean, that's a big
yeah.
difference. It would be good to know that it isn't.
I think the math is right. I think somebody just, when it was typed up, it was put in incorrectly.
All right. Tom?
I want to make sure we don't just gloss over the second piece of the information that I think is important for us to have. Since it is projected as an income and it may be under other listings, I'd like to know where the Board of Health fees go and what they are.
In terms of where they go, or do those go to the general fund, or is there a revolving fund, Mary, for the Board of Health? I'm not aware of one.
There's both. All fees collected go into the general fund unless they go into a revolving fund. So Health Department has a revolving fund that people buy their green bags for trash recycling. And that's been in existence for many, 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 many years. Otherwise, everything that the town collects goes into the general fund.
Right. Again, my question still stands that I'd like to know the fees that the Board of Health is charging. They must have a fee structure somewhere.
Yeah, there is, and I'll get you that.
Mary, hang on one second, Chris. Mary, you mentioned the revolving fee, and I remember seeing that in previous years. Did we get a recap of the Board of Health revolving account?
Yes, I believe it's in your package.
Okay. All right.
Solid waste 2805, it's towards the end.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Yes, Chris.
That minor discrepancy that I mentioned is on page 17. It's for the sewer enterprise fund. They moved to appropriate $2,440,500. But at the end, it says, and that $3,301,100 be raised.
that's,
I
Excuse me?
believe it should probably read the $2,440,000.
But
Steve's
sorry
running-
about this. I'm having a paper challenge. I put things in pointing the wrong way, so now I'm. Bear with me. So is that something we should point out to?
Yes, because if the motion is made in that manner, they will raise $3 million instead of $2 million.
Mary, do you see where Chris?
Jim,
Yes, Steve.
He's got an
that
answer.
is a typo.
Okay.
I thought
That's
so.
a typo. I'll have that corrected for the final package.
All right. Great.
It should be the 2.4.
All right.
I was afraid you were going off to the Bahamas, Steve.
Oh, Chris, I'm having technological issues today. I'm on my phone now because I can't sign in through the computer. So
Oh, dear.
I apologize if you see a phone flip. It means I just dropped it.
Okay.
Well, that'll slow you down. All right, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chris, for catching that. So my vote would be that we start up where we left off last meeting in terms of the various departments, just to see whether we had questions, not had questions, whether we need to see someone about it. And my notes indicate that we finished through human services, which was page 10 of 18.
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
So that what I would suggest is, why don't we move on now to the next page, page 11 of 18, and we'll just, it looks like we only have 2 pages left to go.
Yeah. And Jim, through the chair, if I may, I'd just like to make a statement. There was a brief conversation in our last meeting regarding the questions on some of the increases and decreases. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware that the past practice, which has been a good practice, is that whenever there's an increase or a decrease that reflects in an amount of money that's over 5,000 or under 5,000, we'd like an explanation. That's always been the practice since I've been on the council, and I'd like to see that continue.
It sounds reasonable, Tom. Are there items that specifically didn't have comments, or are you talking about the individual department budgets?
Yes, well, what we're looking over now, I made some comments in the last meeting. I think that's something that was 2% or something, and some of the comments were, why are we picking on the little guys? But they're not little when they add up.
Right. Okay. So our first order here is payroll taxes, and obviously a function of what our estimated payroll is. So that's showing an increase of 4.9% with a note. Basically looks like just what the formula is for using it. So this, we'd only have I assume this is hard to have a question. I'm a little surprised that it's going up 4.9, because it didn't look like the overall salaries were going up that much, Steve. Is it directly in proportion?
Yeah, it's directly proportional to the overall salary increases for everybody. On general, we're going up 1% for each department head, depending on the dollar amount that would impact it.
Yeah, through the chair. Does
Yeah.
this include the projected or recommended new positions as well in that?
It would, yes.
And would if the payroll taxes are going up 4.9%, Steve, does that kind of imply that total salaries and payroll are going up 4.9%?
John, I don't think so. I'm not sure right now. I'd have to double check some numbers, but in general, no, it's the percentage increase is over what we budgeted last year. So depending on how the correlation between the two would reflect it. I understand how it would appear that it would, but I'm not positive. I don't think it does, but I'm not positive. But I can have that and send out an email on that too.
Yeah, Chris?
Through the chair. Would this, is this also taking into consideration the union contracts and so forth that have to be renegotiated for July 1? Is there a cushion there?
No, we have not reflected in there. And the step increases and longevity increases that we have budgeted in are in there, but no, there's no reserve, there's no buffer of we're going to go up 2% because of as Mary stated earlier, to be for bargaining in good faith.
Okay, yeah, I understand that. Thank you.
Yep.
So on a normal year where we didn't have a contract being negotiated, that would seem to indicate to me that this would be going up even higher.
Potential.
Potential, yeah.
Okay.
Any questions on payroll taxes beyond what we've just discussed? Okay. Workers' comp, nice that it's down. And it's one of the few insurances that are down. Any concerns of anything that we should be knowledgeable about other than saying thank you very much?
I kind of like the thank you very much part. No, this was per, Mary had talked to MIA and they sent a letter saying that this is what they're expecting.
Right. Tom?
Yeah, my question would be, I would expect this to go down and go down dramatically because of COVID. We have not had a number of people working, which would reduce the workers' comp. We have not had a number of people or DPW workers driving the roads as we have in the past, which would bring the workers' comp claims down due to the lack of accidents or injuries. So I think this might just be a shot in the dark, so to speak. It's going to be a one-time decrease. I would like to see our worker comp claims go down, as I stated in the past, and I think there's still opportunities to do that. And it may be down again this year due to COVID again, but probably not as much, depending on when this pandemic lifts. So I wouldn't look at that as necessarily a very positive thing, although it's heading in the right direction.
Well, it's positive for this year. Yeah, your caution about next year and the following years is certainly apropos, Tom. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Health and life insurance. Obviously, this is one of our whammies, which you've identified. You and Mary have identified. And I forget if you mentioned that there was anything we had any leverage over in this particular expense account.
As far as the life insurance, we're basing that off estimates that Corinne got in our benefits, and we buffered for any potential new positions. So we're hoping that it comes in lower, but we did it based on the ones we had was an average of 5%, and then another 2.5% for any new positions that may come in.
Yeah.
We don't have leverage, so to speak, where these are Scantic Valley bids. The providers that we act with, those are the rates. So kind of held hostage in a manner of speaking.
But yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I'd like to just ask a question here. It's health and life, and I can't recollect the exact number, but I think we had multiple insurer companies that we were dealing with. And because of that, our rates won't reflect the true volume of work that this company may be getting. And if there's an opportunity, I don't know if there's an opportunity to do it now, but certainly there's an opportunity to maybe reflect on choosing one provider and reducing our cost.
Tom, you're confusing me. I don't understand the question. Could you restate it?
Yeah, the question, Rich, is we have multiple insurance companies we're dealing with and allowing people to pick and choose. What I'm suggesting is we consolidate them into one, very simply.
You mean only offer, for example, Health New England?
Yeah, whatever. I don't know what the best choice would be, but something worth looking at. These rates are going to continue to go up.
Through the chair,
Yes.
wouldn't that be subject to some negotiations with the unions as well, because they're covered by these insurance companies? The other thing that popped into my mind was that some people have families, 2 or 3 children, and some people are close to retirement and they don't have any children. So if we did go with just one provider, I would think they would have to offer a multitude of plans. Just a comment, that's all.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like there's a whole lot for us to be done this year on it. So any other steps that one sees that needs to be taken on that, or should we move along?
Wow.
All right. And then liability insurance is up
Wow.
again at 19.7%. Is that a quote or is it an estimate?
It's estimated at this point.
So last year, it looks like we budgeted a decrease of about 6.8%. So this is kind of coming back. Refresh me what this covers. I'm sorry to be ignorant.
No, it covers all, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Steve, go ahead.
Sorry, Mayor. It covers all the property liability and our professional liability coverages, meaning, you know, bonding, you know, security. It's not a surety bond like treasurer and collectors have. But it covers, say, me, Mary, town officials.
And when you say liability for property, that isn't actually property insurance, is it, Steve? Or
I believe it is for, you know, if damage done to.
burns down, this would replace it.
All the vehicles, all the motor vehicles that the town operates, owns and operates are included, all our IT equipment, all of our servers, all of our, you know, as I said, the IT, it's a very expensive coverage. There's about 17 schedules of coverage that if you want them, you're welcome to them.
No, I guess I wouldn't have thought of it as liability insurance. That's all.
You just lump it under that general category.
All right. So any particular idea or thought as to why it would increase that much over the course of 1 year?
We did increase the IT coverage. We only had a very small amount of coverage for, and we've spent 100 or 200,000 in the last couple of years on devices and whatnot. So that's a chunk of it.
So the note says per MIA letter 3/12/21. So is MIA an association that then gives you what your bill is going to be?
Yeah, that stands for Mass Insurance
The local.
Institute or something like that. They're connected with the Mass Municipal Association, and they represent probably 329 of the 350 municipalities in Massachusetts for insurance purposes. I don't know what the acronym stands for without looking it up.
No, you don't have to bother. So would it be do you have any idea whether most towns experienced this type of increase on their premium quote?
I really don't have any way of answering that today, Jim.
Okay. I guess this would be one I would just wonder about a little bit, Mary. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I might be able to add a little insight in my dealings with the insurance companies. This is what they're determined is a hard market. They're now starting to tighten their belt lines, so to speak, and they're starting to raise their rates across the board, just as a point of information.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Tom. Then retirement assessment, 4.7%. And this is one where you get a bill, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you've received what the bill is for this year. So is the 4,070,000 based on what was provided to us?
Yes, the Hampden County Retirement Board sent us the bill, and that's where we took the number from.
Yeah. Any questions on those? Any questions on insurance other than what we talked about?
I have a question, Jim.
Yes, Chris.
How soon would we know final numbers? Would we know by the time Mary presents her budget, or would we know by June 1st when the counselors have to vote on the budget? Would there be a firmer figure, I guess is what I mean.
I don't know, Chris. I've asked the representative 5 times at least for when we can expect that. And I keep getting, well, these are the quotes. This is the best I got for you now. So I don't want to tell you a date certain that I'm not certain of.
Okay, thanks.
Hopefully we would have a number, but we can follow up again. I don't know if we'll get any better information.
Yeah.
Chris, which insurance accounts were you asking about?
I was looking at health and life insurance and then the liability insurance.
All right.
Well,
So-
the health and life figures are solid.
Oh, they
Those-
are.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry, I misunderstood.
So we've gotten that it's a firm cost. It's not, I think probably we were looking at the explanation, estimated increase.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe when we made this form out, it was estimated and we just didn't change that note.
Okay.
Right, because it looks like we estimated at 5%. So.
I'll update the comments.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
All right, then let's move on to general fund principal. This is really a scheduled thing. So it's not really a budgeting other than making sure we've got it correct. I don't downplay the complexity of calculating everything, Steve, and making sure you've got it right. But in terms of whether we can skinny it or do ever, it's really through the refinancings and things that you've already done that this gets really affected. So obviously, a very big change in terms of reducing our debt service, minus 1,164,000. I have no more questions about that. The community preservation, this is really a pass-through as far as I understand. So the debt service that the town pays for the 80,000 and also for the 80,000 of principal, and also for the community preservation, which skips a line to 19,000. We do get reimbursed, and that shows in our summary of revenue as revenue.
Shows on the read.
On the recap, huh?
Just so that, I mean, it is what it is, and the benefit of having the CPC is that their funds are able to reimburse the town for these payments, correct? All right. Okay.
Yes.
So then we have general fund interest, which also is down 129,000. And I assume this is somewhat also as a result of the refinance, Steve?
Yeah.
Yes, because the rates, when we refunded the bonds, the rates went down. We have today's rates versus the ones we originally did at.
So I'm looking at general fund short-term borrowing. I know we had a budget of 50,000 last year. Looks like we didn't spend anything on short-term borrowing the year before. And we're budgeting the 50,000. So in terms of an increase on the budget, it certainly doesn't affect things. But I guess my question is that in the past, it was my understanding sometimes that what the treasurer or whatever would do was, in order to get projects funded, in order to get the projects going and started, that they would borrow short term. And then when enough projects had gotten started and they could pool it all together, then they would put a bond together and do the long-term bonding. Is that something that is not a strategy that we would approach or use anymore?
Well, to kind of play catch up with because we didn't go out to bond last year, we're looking into doing a ban to take advantage of it this year to take care of all through 2021. That would certainly be part of it. And then a ban can be no longer than a year. So sometime before the year is up, we would, when the due date comes, we pay that off and we'd go out to bond to cover it, to carry it forward. So something like that kind of strategy I can see going forward, because it helps not only with the projects now, but it would also help with the any deficits that we see at year end. And it's a short-term gap, if you will, to cover that.
So if you did that, is this where the interest payments would come from, this category, the short-term borrowing?
Yeah, actually, it would be. It could come from there too, but it also we in the past, what I've been told is they used it for a cost of issuance of said bonds and of any of borrowing, and so we've reclassed that out. But this would be applied towards that, yes.
So the interest would just go into that general fund interest? If
Yeah.
the interest of the ban. Kathy, did you have something you wanted to?
No, you're saying the word ban, B-A-N, as in,
I'm sorry, bond anticipation notes. It's an acronym. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Kathy. I thought I was talking about a rock band.
That would be more
I thought
fun,
you were
right?
saying ban, B-A-N, like we're not going to do it. Bond anticipation.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's an acronym that I've used a lot, and I think everybody knows what I'm talking about.
I
Oh,
understand.
So I
no,
apologize.
Now that you,
There's certain terms that are specialized to, certain disciplines, and if you don't hear it often enough, it doesn't.
Oh yeah.
So I thought it was something like bank anticipation notes, so Kathy, so what the heck, we can make up our own.
that's right.
All right. Any other questions on debt service? Okay, so that takes us through the general fund budget. What I would say is let's take a look at page 12, which are other uses of general funds, and see if we have any questions that we need to have followed up. So the capital projects is the first one, and we will have to schedule a period of time of our chunk of one of our meetings to really walk through that.
Yes.
To make sure that the recommendations, that the committee understands the recommendations of Mary's capital planning committee, and has either amendments or recommendations to change or whatever. So we'll do that separately. Stabilization fund. Obviously, at one point we tried to put 100,000 a year into it last year to kind of save the budget, and with such uncertainty about what was happening in terms of COVID, that was suspended. Mary's got 50,000 in here for that, as well as the OPEB trust fund. I think it's reasonable. I don't know if anybody has issues, questions. Okay. So then compensated fund balance. This has 50,000, which is 25 less than last year, but it's consistent with what was actually paid in 2020. I have to confess that I never quite remember exactly what this is for, but it's a reduction on the budget. Questions on it? Okay. Evaluation Services Fund, as I recall, this is the assessors and the service that we get for reappraising, going through the reappraisal process. And as I understood, it was kind of like we pay over 3 years. So this year it's the same as last year. Is that consistent? Does that?
Yeah, it's an average. Every third or fifth year, depending on when we do the reval, you get a spike in that amount. And for budgeting purposes, I guess the past practice in this town has been budget an equal amount over each fiscal year so that you don't get a huge spike in the reval year.
Yeah, we had suggested that a while back, Mary, just to kind of even things out.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yes.
I think it's working fine. Our current assessor seems to like that as opposed to changing it back to an actual figure.
Okay.
We had discussions about that, so.
Questions on that? Chris?
I'll just make a comment. I believe the town is going to have to go through a full reval for fiscal '23 because the state back a couple of years ago, change us to a 5-year cycle instead of a 3-year cycle. But Diane would know better than I. But that's what I recall. So this is a very normal thing. It's a usual thing that we've done in the budget.
We'll be going out to bid for a new service also shortly. We have to send, because the contract with the current appraiser is expiring at June 30.
So Community Preservation Fund, there's nothing here. There was an expense in 2020. I can't remember the special circumstances for that. But obviously it wasn't active in 2021. And so I'm assuming we have no questions on that. Yes, Mike. You're on mute. You're on mute, Mike.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
While we're on the subject of PC, Community Preservation funding here, we haven't, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure if the mic was working right, but there is agenda items on our upcoming council meeting, and generally when we're in the middle of a budget season, you know, any changes that we felt might be significant to the budget, I would want to put forward to everybody prior. But while we have Steve in the audience as well, I don't believe that any approvals or of the items coming up on our agenda will have any consequences on the budget. I just wanted to hear Steve's input on that, if he could give us any input and make sure my facts are correct.
It shouldn't have any impact. We have money, it's coming out of their undesignated fund balances based on the category. So that they should, and they have enough funds in those fund balances to cover it. So it shouldn't have any impact.
Okay, that's great. Everybody here knows what's taking place, and it will expedite things and make our meeting a little bit more efficient on Tuesday evening, knowing that there's no consequences to the budget. Thank you, Jim and Steve.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so the only remaining items here on this sheet for page 12 is the real estate abatements, which shows a $25,000, $26,000 increase. Does that mean we're kind of expects an increase? The assessor expects an increase in abatement requests. Okay. And I think assessor is one of the ones that we're going to talk to anyhow. So.
Jim?
Yeah.
Crumbling foundations, I think, is part of Diane's thought process there, but she can certainly address that issue better than I can.
Yeah. I wonder how an appraiser deals with that. Steve, you got a.
In talking to Diane, and as everybody says, she'll be able to explain a lot more eloquently than I can. She wanted to bump up the abatement amount because she felt the overlay was getting too low. And when we did the recap last year, there's a quirk in the state system that if you hit recalc, it puts in what they think you should have, not necessarily what we think we should have. And so there was a reduction from what we thought last year. So she wanted to bring the level up to a certain amount that she's comfortable with. That's why the increase to the 200. That's one of the reasons.
So the state's number was smaller than ours?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Then state offset, public libraries, offset receipts.
Yeah.
Any other questions about these items, the other financing uses? Okay.
Yeah, Jim?
Yes.
Just a question, I guess. The state charges and the state offset, are those firm numbers, or
Yeah.
those based on or not based on any changes that may occur before we finally get a budget passed at the state level?
Go ahead, Steve.
Sure. The chair, these are based on the governor's budget they submitted in the end of January. They're part of the cherry sheet that they send us, and so until that's approved, they are open to change, both up or down.
Yeah. So this is the numbers we typically use, Tom, the cherry sheet numbers,
Yeah.
but knowing that, they can be changed, right?
Yep.
Okay. And I appreciate the breakdown by percentage of each of the components of the budget. And that was the part I wanted to make sure we got through so we could finish up. So has there been a date set for the public hearing for the budget? I know we heard back from the schools that theirs is going to be Monday, April 26th.
I guess that's up to Mike, but I was planning on presenting the so-called final draft budget on April 27th, which is the last meeting in April of the council before the May 1st deadline.
So when does the public hearing then take place? After you present your final, and then so is it in May that the public hearing takes place? Or I kind of forget how the sequence is supposed to work.
I would have to defer to Jeannie or Kathy or Mike on that. I don't know.
My recollection is, I'm sorry, Jim, through the chair.
Yep, no, absolutely. Go ahead.
My recollection is after Mary submits for May 1st and prior to the council voting to adopt a budget by June 1st, it's got to occur sometime in there. But the problem we had last year was with, the need for multiple revisions in all department budgets and Mary's draft budget because of the governor's reliance, justifiably, on the 1/12 budgeting method. There was just a tiny window of time for us to squeeze in the hearing, and we had to turn around a day or 2 days later and vote in a final. So it looks like we still have 31 or 30 May days of breathing room. So we might think about doing it so that we don't feel so jammed up.
Right. I mean, I know before we had our charter change, basically it was just a draft budget that was presented at the public hearing. It hadn't been finalized in any way, which would suggest that it could be done in April if that were the case. Because if you wait to 5/1, then you have to have the hearing. We've got to squeeze in our place to
Deliberate on
give
Mary's.
our recommendations to the town council. So I guess just an open question as to what date we're gonna, or what we're gonna use, and whether that's an April hearing or a May hearing. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, another component of that, and I think we started to brush on it, is the public hearing feedback. We always provide the opportunity for our residents and taxpayers to provide their input on the budget, and then
Right.
we finalize it after that, so that their suggestions, recommendations are not discarded.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me one year we actually piggybacked with the schools. The town hearing actually piggybacked with the school budget hearing, so that everybody could hear the whole thing, on the same evening. But so I'll just wait to hear how you all come out with that, because it's kind of independent of us a little bit. We're interested in it, but I just want to know where it fits. That's all.
Does it, if I can, well,
Yes, go ahead, Kathy.
to Tom's comment that the public needs to have input, well, we need to provide them some kind of document from which they can derive some thoughts. And to your point, Jim, as long as there's input from an opportunity for input, it really is irrelevant if we have a draft budget, a manager's final budget, or we're on the eve of adopting a formal one, as long as the public has a reasonably truthful document in enough time to look it over and email thoughts, or, join a subsequent meeting.
Right. I agree with you, Kathy. Again, all we did in years past before the town council was assemble the budgets as they had been submitted. And that's what was used, to get reaction from residents at the hearings. I would think that the draft budget that was submitted by the town manager would have enough information to satisfy, the ability for town residents to give feedback. So, it could be either April or May, but I'll let someone else who knows more than I do, kind of figure out how that works.
Jim, I don't think I'm going to have any significant changes to the draft unless you slash this budget to smithereens. But the estimates we have are what they are. There was an article in the paper today that the legislature had increased the Chapter 70 funding, the gross amount, but that's not, the trickle down to East Long Meadow's percentage of that is not clear. So there's a lot of uncertainty. And I don't think any of it, frankly, certainly the union issues are not going to be resolved by.
Well, yeah, and you're right, Mary. I think what you have is certainly, from my point of view, would certainly seem to be acceptable for the purposes of a public hearing. I guess it would really be more what is, if it's a public hearing, meaning the town council has to have a public hearing on it, it would be really the council's pleasure as to when that's best for them, I guess, to
Right.
have it done. So I thought I'd bring it up because I know the schools, and obviously we wouldn't want to be trying to piggyback on a meeting where a town council meeting where, that is also having to be done. So, okay. So let's recap who we feel we're going to need to talk to. We kind of covered that mostly last week. What I'd like to do is kind of shoehorn into our remaining meetings. And as I look at it, we have at most 9 meetings. I would suggest probably effectively 8 meetings. We have, including this one, we have the 15th, we have the 22nd, and we have the 29th. And then there's the 6th, the 13th, the 20th, and if you really send it to the last minute, the 27th. But I would hope that we would really not need that 27th. And so I think, Mary has her presentation that needs to be done on or before May 1. So I think you just said 4/27 is your target to the town council, Mary. So we will need to figure out when the town council's schedule is in May and try to target a town council meeting for us to make our recommendations. But I suspect that it's going to be somewhere between 5/13 and 5/20 or thereabouts. So effectively maybe half a dozen meetings unless we stick a few special ones in. So that being said, obviously one of the meetings we want to make sure we have is to invite representatives from the school committee and the school department to just talk through the budget. So I would say that, anything either April 22nd, April 29th, but I would think we'd want to devote a little bit of a time to that to make sure, it works. We could do it as early as next week, but there may be some more questions or more review you might want to do. I'm not sure. So would anybody feel okay about trying to see if the schools can make it either the 22nd or the 29th? Yeah, I'll go with Chris and Rich and Kathy. Yes.
Maybe it would be best to go after their hearing. If they're having the hearing on the 26th, have them meet with us on the 29th.
All right, that makes some sense. Rich?
I agree with Mary 100%. my concern is that I have a personal conflict on the 29th and cannot be present. And with my previous experience as school committee member, I would like to be there, but I think Chris's point is well taken.
Kathy?
I was going to say to have the school committee come to sit with us, stay away from the 22nd. It's in their April vacation week.
Oh.
That's what I thought Rich was going to say, but
Yeah.
maybe you're not hardwired anymore. For the
I'm not. Thank you, Kathy.
So, I mean, that's subject to their being available, that date. Rich, there's nothing hardwired that we have to meet on Thursday at 1:30 on the 29th. We could meet later that afternoon, or we could try to meet in the morning, or we could choose another day.
Yeah.
Because
I'm
I
out
think,
of
I think
town
it'd be
that
very,
week.
the whole week. All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, gotcha. So that would bring us to 5/6.
Yeah, that would be acceptable through the chair.
You wouldn't mind, Chris?
No, of course not.
Oh, I appreciate that.
So that would leave us, depending on when we have to give our final report to our final recommendations, that would leave us the 13th and hopefully the 20th, perhaps, to deliberate if we needed to and circle back with them if we needed to. All right.
Sure.
So you want to try for 5/6 and see. I'll I'll extend an invitation to them for that.
Good.
And it may be that we might have to adjust our time or our day, to make sure that they can make it with us. But we'll see how that works out. Okay.
That's fine.
Then we have the police and fire. This is more so in the neighborhood of the discussion about the positions, the 2 new positions.
Would you want to, Jim? Would you want to do the police on 4/15 at our next meeting and do fire, or vice versa? Do them in the next 2 meetings?
Could we do them in the same meeting?
Sure.
If
Yeah,
I
go ahead, Kathy.
I think if you look at the backup information that Chief Williams has given us, it is so replete with every detail we could possibly need. And Chief Morissette the same, and he's always been that way. I'm of the feeling we can get them both done in 90 minutes.
Yes,
Yeah,
I would agree.
With Captain.
So if we could try to see if they could be available, police and fire, for the 15th.
I did just a thought through the chair that the people that we said we'd see are also Ryan Quimby and Bruce Finney, but that's about the whole list. So I think that's all we said at our last meeting. So we do have time within there. I think the police and fire together would make sense.
Yeah.
So that brings us to, well, Mary, is that okay with you? Yeah, assuming they're available. If they're not available, we'll.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, do you want me to arrange their availability for you?
Whichever you prefer.
Well, I'm happy to do it. I've already advised them that, be on the lookout.
Yeah. Well, no, it would work for me if you would.
All right, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Sure. And are you going to schedule DPW and IT now also?
Yes, that's my hope. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have the 22nd. And it seems to me that we could do IT and who else were we talking about here?
DPW.
Does that work for folks?
Yeah.
For the
Yep.
22nd of April?
22nd, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So then we have, and this is really to the positions, I guess, Mary, the finance director, and we have your position. I know you want to be further down the schedule in terms of discussing it.
Just haven't had time to draft anything in writing.
So
So,
So, Jim,
Yes,
if I may, I think
Yep.
with Steve's request being a temporary part-time position on a trial basis, I think it's something we can squeeze into one of the, either the 15th or 22nd.
Yeah,
that's probably true. Well, let's do it this way. We'll see if we can squeeze it in on the 15th. And if we can't, we'll try it for the 22nd. Is that okay with you, Steve?
29th, Jim.
That works.
Well, I'm thinking 29th might be a good, and I apologize, Rich, but I'm thinking it might be a good capital projects. You know, we might need much of our meeting for the,
Yeah,
to go over the capital projects.
agree.
So that's what I was thinking in terms of,
Then, Jim, I would ask the question.
Yeah.
On capital if we're going to do capital projects, should we do that before or after we see DPW and IT, because they both have substantial capital projects?
in terms of
Our question.
you wanting to be able to review that, so if you had follow-up questions that you want to ask them, you'd have that ability.
Yes.
All right. Well,
I
we
don't know how any-
we could change that around and make capital projects April 22nd and DPW and IT April 29th. I mean, both of them have fairly substantial capital project requests.
Right.
All right, that makes sense.
So 26 will be dedicated only to capital projects?
The 26th will be, excuse me,
22nd.
the 22nd will be capital projects. And the DPW IT will be the 29th.
9. Okay.
So I did have also that about talking to the assessor. And I think that was more about new growth and those kind of issues. Did we still want to talk to her?
I think that's something that could probably be handled through an email or a phone call by you, Jim. I think there was also a question, there was an increase in the non-salary line item.
Right.
Yeah, at our last meeting, we did say that we would do the research on the assessor, not invite them in.
Yeah.
Steve, I'm sorry, Jim, could I ask Steve a question on that?
Absolutely.
The non-salary, was that Diane's request for that GIS drone ability?
I'm good. I believe so, but I'm verifying it now.
Yeah, okay.
She's looking, because we thought we might get through the CARES Act, and it did.
And they rejected that request. However, I will say that last week, Chris, I think you asked about the Rescue Plan Act. And I said that
Yes.
East Long Meadows is entitled to like 1.4 million, but we're also going to receive the East Long Meadow pro rata share of the Hampden County allocation, if you will. So we expect to receive almost $5 million in the next 90 days. Now, we don't know what we can use it for, yeah, what restrictions will be on it, but that obviously plays into my thinking quite a bit, and it adds to the fact that so much of this is uncertain. But
Yeah.
and contradicting that, just today we received a 9-page memo from the Division of Local Services saying, please make your revenue estimates as conservative as possible. So go figure. To your point about new growth, I mean, we're down to 350 in Diane's estimation.
Yeah.
And that's the counsel we're getting. I mean, her observation was sort of confirmed by that bulletin.
Kathy,
Through
and
the
then,
chair.
or Steve, are you commenting on this?
Yeah, on the non-salary expenses, the other thing that came through with Diane's service, whereas the uptick in, there's an uptick in training because she wants to bring everybody up to speed, I guess. And also in dues and memberships for additional, I assume it's additional person being added to the Assessors Association that they want them to be involved with.
Kathy?
Just a question for Mary. Where again is the plus or minus 5 million coming from?
She's on mute, Kathy, I think.
Yes. Mary, you're on
Mary,
mute.
you're on mute.
The American Rescue Plan Act. It's the recent federal legislation that's been passed. We got an email from the Mass Municipal Association indicating the breakdown by community in Massachusetts. Our total is up to 4.7.
Okay, so that's coming from MMA then.
Well, it's coming,
Delivered through MMA for American Rescue.
well, the information's coming from them, yeah.
Got it.
Again, the uses or any restrictions on those uses are not yet fully determined.
Okay.
Okay.
So going back to our, we'll recap here. So far, Thursday the 15th, we'd like to talk with police, fire, and Steve. Thursday the 22nd, we'll cover capital projects. Thursday the 29th, we'll cover DPW and IT. And hopefully Thursday the May 6th, we'll talk with schools. So I'm hoping perhaps by May 13th, our meeting of May 13th, that's when we kind of go through our final thoughts and decisions on the budgets. Does that make sense to everybody?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Steve, Jim,
Yes.
I also had in my notes that we want to do a little, we as a committee want to do a little more investigation with the assessor, human resources, and veteran services. Those three thoughts were brought up, that we would look deeper into that, not call them in, so to speak.
Right. And if we have time in our 90 minutes, we may be able to actually
Okay,
try to address that this afternoon.
Okay.
Good, but good notes, Rich. Does the town council set their meeting schedule? And has the town council meetings been set for May?
Yes. Yeah, I see Mike's left the room, but I can answer that. Yes, in April, the set ones are the 13th and the 27th. And we have had a standing practice of adding additional as, need arose. And at every budget year, we've tried to do as much as we can to, if we need a third meeting, we need a third meeting. In May, it's the 11th and the 25th.
Oh, May is 11 and the 25th. So the 13th, we would be past your first meeting, and that would only leave the 25th. I'm just a little leery of waiting for make our recommendations to the council, until your May 25th meeting, only because if you have any questions or issues, is there enough time to, circle back and then, for the town council to have those resolved and make their votes. But looks like the 11th might be a little short for us, unless we try to schedule something before that Tuesday to finalize I'm just not sure whether we're going to actually be ready
Yeah.
for the 11th.
Through the
Yes,
chair,
Tom.
I see Mike is back.
Mike's back, he might be able to answer.
He might be able to answer that.
So Mike, we're kind of looking at the schedule again. And we're going through our departments that we'll be meeting with and the capital projects. And our last meeting is May 6th, and that we'll hopefully be meeting with the schools. So we were kind of earmarking our meeting of May 13th, Thursday, May 13th, to finalize the recommendations that we would make to the town council. But I understand you have your two meetings in May are the 11th and the 25th. So we would not be in time to make our recommendations to the town council for the 5/11 meeting. And the question I was having is, if we waited to the May 25th meeting, does that leave enough time if the council members have questions, comments that need to be researched, resolved, to be able to, for the town council will circle back and make their vote by June 1st. And it seems like that would be a little, I don't know, I would be nervous if that were that.
Well, if we had the information ahead of time, it's sounding like you guys would be finalizing kind of on the 20th. So if we had any of that information prior to the 25th, we could get a jump on it. So
Well, we,
definitely expedite things.
we should have information within 2 or 3 days after the 13th, hopefully, unless we have to spill over to the 20th. But even so, that would mean we could provide some information prior, yeah, so that it wouldn't be a cold presentation, meaning the town councilors, seeing it for the first time. How do people, I mean, again, this is not, I'm not going to want to talk or speak for council members in terms of their comfort level, et cetera, but that looks like our time frame now is the 13th. We would hopefully do that unless we had to spill over to the 20th, but we would definitely be in a position to give some information, prior to us actually, attending a town council meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, and your own meetings, maybe things might move a little quicker than you anticipated too. I mean, right now we're looking at the 15th with police and fire. I imagine because both the documents that both parties submitted are so thorough that I don't think it's going to take a long time to go through those two. And then on the 22nd, right now we're talking about capital, and you were going to push off IT and DPW to the 29th.
Right.
I could only guess that maybe you could do capital and IT on the same day, and DPW could flow down to the 29th. But I think there's.
I mean, the other way is, and maybe we're trying to wag the tail in the wrong direction, because if we added one meeting to our schedule, that would back us up, so that if we had one set of meetings where we had the school where we could back ourselves up, so the 420 we would be done looking at everybody by 429, then we would be able to be looking at 5-6 as a
Exactly. That's where I was
for recommendations. Chris, you're shaking your head. Do you think that's a little too?
No. I'm thinking, I want to kind of muddy the waters even more. I mean, I know we're with an hour and a half, but why can't we go maybe 2 hours with some of the meetings and get a little more done to go along with Mike's idea?
Well, yes, I think we're thinking the same way. Either lengthen the meeting or add one additional meeting, so that we can get through everybody in enough time to have a little more, to maybe be able to hit that 11th town council meeting as opposed to the 25th. Chris, you were shaking your head, so
Yeah. Well, I think you're putting it just feels like a lot of pressure to me. And I think what we're losing sight of also is the council's budget hearing.
Right.
Are they going to hold that on May 11th? If that's the case, that's fine. I mean, we could certainly meet on the 12th and the 13th of May, to be our crunch time to work out what our recommendations are going to be, get those printed up, get them to the council for 5/20 or right around that time, so that if they're going to finalize the budget on 5/27, because I don't think we can squeeze ourselves. I think that we can certainly accommodate the council, which we want to do. But if Mary is going to give her proposed budget on the 27th of April, and we're going to be meeting with the school committee on 5/6, if we had to that week, we could meet one more time, or within the week of 5/13. So if the council holds their budget hearing on May 11th, we could meet the 12th and the 13th, or the 13th and 14th.
all right. So if I'm hearing you correctly, we can kind of scrunch that second week in May and if we need to make sure we have our recommendations prepared.
That's what I'm thinking.
And able to provide sufficient advance notification of what those recommendations are for the town council members to
Yeah.
look at, absorb, and ask questions of. Okay,
Yes.
I think that sounds reasonable. Rich, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to follow up with Chris. So should, scheduling wise, we should hold the 13th, obviously, for our regular meeting. And did I hear Chris say maybe we should hold the 14th open for maybe a second meeting in case we need it? Is that what I'm hearing?
Or,
Yes. The 12th
or
or
the
the
12th,
14th.
Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay.
So how does Wednesday the 12th look for people in case we needed to use that? Or actually, we probably would use it, and if we were done with everything, we wouldn't use the 13th, but
The 12th, Wednesday always works for me. Better than Friday.
all right. All right, then we'll make that as our tentative plan. And we'll be able to pin that down a little more the closer we get to it.
Okay.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Thank
Jim?
you all. Yeah,
Can I just ask, would that be at 1:30?
holding to our typical time, yes, but if it weren't convenient for committee members, we certainly could accommodate a different time.
Yeah, just later in the afternoon, it would bump up against something else, that's all. So you could go to 2 maybe, but an evening meeting would not work on that Wednesday for us.
You mean only because of the LCAT issue?
Correct.
Yeah. So do we want to tentatively, we'll think of like 1 o'clock?
Oh, 1:30 is fine. I mean, the usual time is fine.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. You mean if we went later, okay, all right. All right, thank you, Don. Well, thank you. Sorry to put you through all that, but I feel better. And we do have a little time for our 90 minutes. And as Rich mentioned, we had identified a few budgets that we were all going to take a look at, the individual budgets, to see whether the questions we had could be answered without needing to involve the department head. So, Rich, you have the list.
Yeah,
Very
first
well
one-
done. So,
First one was 141 assessor.
all right.
That's the one we just discussed.
What is it, 141?
Yeah,
It's on page, it's on
Page 5.
page
page 6.
6. Yeah, my eyesight's, right.
I believe that's the one that Steve just gave us some information on.
Yes.
So that was adding back in
Some training.
some monies for training and membership, it sounded like.
Yeah.
And the department head increase, that is based on a contract, I assume?
No, that's a placeholder. Diane does have a contract. Most of the department heads' contracts have expired and I've not renewed any of them. So everyone who has an expired contract is acting as at will so that we can straighten out our contractual language and so forth. So if she's got a 2% in there, it's an estimate based on performance evaluation that has not occurred yet, but the department heads are all self-evaluating and they're going to have their reports to me by June 30. So it won't help for budget purposes.
Yeah. So I'm not seeing a 2%.
3%.
It's 3.57
On the assessor?
on the.
No, 3% step increases.
Well, that's on the admin people in the office. That's-
Right.
All right, am I looking at something different? I'm looking at 5.
Oh, I see 3.57 in Diane.
Right,
I can explain that. Whether it was last year or the year before or the year before that, some of the budgeted amounts that included raises were not honored. I'm kind of speculating here, like there might have been a 2% raise built in, for example. Steve, do you have the specifics?
I don't have it in front of me. I believe what would happen though is some of the raises came through that weren't included in the budget, and so that as a result, the 21 budget would be lower than what we're basing the potential 1% on top of.
Yeah,
So the actual 21 is higher than the budgeted amount.
yeah, because prior years that included budgeted amounts for increases were not paid. I mean, there's several department heads that didn't get an increase for 3 years, even though the budget called for it, for example. And that's what happened in Diane's case.
so the actual amount of increase is actually less than this, but this is based on the budget,
yes,
which
That's
was
exactly
lower
right.
than the actual.
yes.
All right, all right. Other questions on the assessors? All right. Rich, what's next on your note?
Human Resources, 152, same page. Human Resources, 152. I think the question was at the 40% increase.
Yeah, non-salary.
142.
152.
152.
Yeah, 152. Okay, what do we got here? And I'm sorry, Rich, what was the question there?
I thought the question came up about the increase being 40.2% on the non-salary.
Right.
So it's a not a big amount, but it was well, it's hard to read the headings, but it looked like the budget for 21 was 18,799, or yeah, 18,799. The budget for FY22 is 26,365 for 75,66, 40% increase, and the biggest part is at 5,400 for consultants.
Well, yes, there's that, but let's see here. The bulk of the increase in HR is for, you'll notice on line 5295, other services miscellaneous. We've increased a $4,500 budget for drug and physical exams for police and fire and DPW workers by $1,000, which is a 22% increase over the prior year. So they're not large dollar amounts, but they're large percentages of these things. I see communication postage is on 13% on a $200 increase. So
Yeah, no, I think where the percentage gets up is the 5,400 that's budgeted under 5308, Mary,
50.
which wasn't in the wasn't a budget item in FY21, but there's a note, something about it being in a
Yeah,
different
it was
place.
in a different budget account last year, account number 945. I'd have to look up where that was. I think
That was-
it may have been our unemployment consultant that we contract with. It might have been listed in the insurance account last year, but I'd have to double check that.
All right. So,
Jim,
yes, Steve.
through the chair. Mary, you're right. It was the, we had the consultant included with the liability insurance line item, which is 945. And
Okay,
because it's not really part of that, we took it out and put it in this budget item, which is why this year it spikes up very high.
okay.
Next year, you would see it be a zero, or very little increase.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Steve, I'm a little slow when it comes to these things. Is it possible for you to send just a little recap of how that worked?
Yep.
Okay. Other questions on HR?
Resources, no.
Okay. What's next, Rich?
The last one I had was Veteran Services. I think it was because it was a large increase.
This is the one where we belong to a small group and we get the lion's share. Is that what you said last time, Mary?
Yes, I have a meeting with them at 3 p.m. to go over the fiscal 22 budget. I'm actually wondering if East Long Meadow should exit the IMA. Not sure we're getting value for services there, and there's going to be a rather testy discussion on that subject in a very few minutes.
All right. Well, consider us patting you on the back and giving you a rah, rah, rah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that answers that question.
Yeah,
Anything else on our list, Rich?
that was it.
All right.
Yeah, I did have
Yes, Don.
one that, we might have glossed over, but I'm not familiar with it, hearing anything about it. I just want to find out if under count 160, non-salary went up almost 28%. It's around $7,681. Is that due to the Charter Review Commission's costs?
1/6,
Did that get paid through that?
trying to find out.
Licensing the clerks.
It went down, Tom, I'm sorry, Jim, through the chair.
Yep. Go ahead.
We're showing that it went down 27%, Tom.
Right, but is that because of the Charter Review's work that everything is all paid for and we're not going to see another charge this year?
It's mostly paid for. It's like 99% paid for. I'll get the exact thing here for you in a second. But that's the lion's share of it. Yes.
Well, actually, it looks like it's something in the air in 5 electronic equipment.
Yeah, it was for the bylaws. The bulk of the
Yeah.
job is done.
It's general code, isn't it? That we're,
Yes.
Code materials, yeah.
What is that, Kathy?
we're contracted with a company, and we're probably in year three of three for a total codification of all of our bylaws, where they'll now be in an electronic format and way more user-friendly than we've experienced in the past. It's more the common way of trying to manage, a 4-inch thick policy manual. And that project through a subcommittee has gone on. As I said, my recollection is we're in year 3 of 3.
Yeah.
We're Tom is on the subcommittee, but we're in the home stretch on that, I believe.
Definitely.
And that's reflected in electronic equipment under the clerk's budget?
Electronic.
Which line
Yeah.
are you looking at, Jim, please?
I'm looking at the last one under non-salary expenses. I mean, it's a minus, so I mean, I'm not complaining too much, Mary, but it's 58.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean.
Electronic equipment went from 8,500 down to 2,200. Man, just was curious.
Well, Kathy's explanation makes sense on the dollar amounts, because that was around $85,000 or $9,000, as I recall, the project cost. Why it's on electronic equipment, I cannot tell you. Could just be
Would that
misplaced.
be a change in the maintenance contract on the new voting machines we bought a year or so ago?
Well, those were closer to 30,000, so I'm not sure that the numbers line.
Maybe perhaps it's just a question that can be
I
clarified.
think it's just an email answer from Jeannie,
Yeah.
actually.
Jeannie or Steve, yeah.
Yeah, just so everyone knows, when I talked to Jeannie earlier, she said it was what Kathy mentioned, the
E-code,
coding, the coding of the bylaws, and that's why it went down so much is what she told me. But I'll verify with her again, and we'll send you an email on that.
So that's all I had for today's meeting. I don't know if we need to bring up anything else today before we adjourn. If none, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, yes, I have one more thing. Rich, how do you feel about taking minutes next meeting?
I'm uncomfortable, but I'm going to give it my best.
All right, that's all any of us can do. And I will thank Kathy in advance for taking the
You're very
minute
welcome.
this meeting. Beyond that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Right.
Second,
And who was the second?
Chris.
Chris? Okay. All right, any discussion? Hearing none, do a roll call vote. Tom?
Yes.
All right, Kathy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
All right, Chris?
Yes.
Jim? Yes. So we are now adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Mary, go get them.
Yeah.
Want to make you late?
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your help.